I've recently been sharing some of the stories of the characters from the classic BBC comedy Dad's Army, and they seem to have got many of you fired up and asking about other members of the platoon, both their character backstories, but also their real stories too. None more so than John Laurie, who played Private Fraser, the pessimistic Scot who frequently uttered the catchphrase in his Scottish burr, "We're doomed!" Aged 71 when he landed the role in Dad's Army, Laurie appeared in 120 screen roles throughout his 50-year acting career. He worked with Hitchcock and Alexander Korda. He trod the boards as Hamlet at the Old Vic in London. He also happened to be a veteran of the Battle of the Somme in the First World War. That's one heck of a life, as you're going to hear about in a while. But there's more, for his character in Dad's Army also has a link to one of Britain's greatest explorers, Sir Ernest Shackleton, and you're going to find out about that link and the story of his rare medal too. This is the story of John Laurie, aka Private Fraser, and the origins of his catchphrase, "We're doomed." John Laurie was born in Dumfries, Scotland in 1897. He played on his Scottish heritage throughout his acting career, not least as the pessimistic Private Fraser in Dad's Army. But don't be fooled that this proud Scot could only play Scottish roles. Many people don't realise that he was a talented Shakespearean actor too, in a career that spanned 50 years. Whilst he'd been acting since the early 1920s, this career was not his initial calling. Having attended grammar school in Dumfries, he had originally trained to be an architect, until volunteering to serve his country in the First World War. Unlike his Dad's Army character, who serves in the Royal Navy at the Battle of Jutland, Laurie's service remained firmly on land. Private 7244 John Laurie joined the 2nd Battalion, the Honourable Artillery Company, the oldest regiment in the British Army, originally formed by King Henry VIII. He served with them on the Western Front. And just like Arnold Ridley, who played Private Godfrey in Dad's Army, Laurie saw action at the Battle of the Somme. Following the Somme, he was invalided out of the frontline service, suffering from bronchial problems, and finished the war serving at the Tower of London. Whilst never suffering from the injuries that Arnold Ridley suffered, Laurie did ask Jim Perry, the co-writer of Dad's Army, not to show footage from the Western Front when they were on set. Once demobbed, he turned his back on his previous architectural career and instead trained to be an actor. His first performance was in 1921, and he was to go on to enjoy a stellar career, both on stage and screen. By 1922, he was acting in Shakespeare plays at the Old Vic and at the Royal Shakespeare Company. In only his second season, he landed the role of Hamlet, something almost unheard of as the role usually went to seasoned actors. Laurie went on to play most of the famous male leads in Shakespeare, including Richard III, Othello and Macbeth, becoming a friend of fellow actor Laurence Olivier. In 1930, he landed his first movie role in one of Alfred Hitchcock's earliest sound movies, entitled Juno and Paycock. He impressed the producer enough to be called up for Hitchcock's 1935 movie, The 39 Steps. In this role, he cast aside his Shakespearean costumes and accents and reverted to his roots, playing a grasping crofter in the Scottish Highlands. Staying in Scotland, John Laurie played the lead role in the film The Edge of the World, a film based upon the depopulation of the outer Scottish Islands, in particular St Kilda. Just before the Second World War, in 1939, he did something completely non-Scottish and non-Shakespeare, as he played the Sudanese Khalifa in Alexander Korda's adaptation of The Four Feathers. The final showdown depicts the Battle of Omdurman, where the Khalifa's army are defeated by the British. It makes me chuckle to wonder if Lance Corporal Jones was there. In all, Laurie was to play 120 screen roles in his long career. During the Second World War, he served in the Home Guard, which he found completely mundane, and it was to colour his initial impression of Dad's Army. An impression that gave rise to his most famous catchphrase, as you will hear in a moment. Following the war, he faced stiff competition in the entertainment industry from the many demobbed soldiers who had found their way into acting. Men like Edward Sinclair, for instance, who had moved from the Oxford and Bucks Light Infantry to finish the war in concert parties. Their acting careers would ultimately cross when Sinclair ended up playing Verger Yateman in Dad's Army. Another such budding actor who got his first taste on the stage while serving in the Combined Services Entertainment was Jimmy Perry. Moving from acting to playwriting, it was Perry, alongside David Croft, who would write and direct Dad's Army. Versatile actor John Laurie was cast as Private James Fraser in this British comedy classic. As the local undertaker, Laurie reverted to his Scottish roots, playing the cantankerous member of the platoon, whose pessimistic views on most things were summed up with his classic catchphrase, "We're doomed!" There's an interesting story about that line. It was never originally a line given to Fraser. When Laurie was approached to join the show, he could not fathom how, having been a member of the Home Guard, something so mundane could be remotely funny. His initial reading of the script didn't improve his real pessimism, and he actually said those words in his Dumfries spur to the co-writers, believing that the show would be a flop. It was far from a flop. Dad's Army ran for 9 series between 1968 and 1977. It regularly attracted audiences of 18 million, nearly a third of the UK population. And Fraser, with his catchline, became synonymous with the show. As with most of the main characters, the writers had created a backstory for Private Fraser. It's fascinating, with a brilliant link to a real-life hero. And here it is. Private James Fraser was born in 1872 on the Isle of Barra, a remote island in the Outer Hebrides, off the west coast of Scotland. The remote and often bleak upbringing influenced the fictional Fraser's pessimistic view on the world, in which his forecasts of doom and death were never far away. Maybe not surprisingly, the young Fraser vacated the Isle of Barra to see the world. His subsequent globetrotting rivaled Lance Corporal Jones. Throughout the show, he drops in stories of his travels as a sailor. These range from pearl diving, to stealing rubies from jungle temples, to learning hypnosis in the South China Seas. During the First World War, he, as a sailor, naturally ended up in the Royal Navy, and was at the Battle of Jutland. Although it then transpires he was actually a cook on one of the British ships in the battle. Nevertheless, he did eventually rise to the rank of Chief Petty Officer, before being busted for striking his superior. His cynical attitude to those in authority, along with his pessimism, would become his hallmark of his character in the Home Guard. After the war, he ended up in Wilmington-on-Sea as both the owner of the local philatelic shop, stamp collecting to you and me, and the town's undertaker. At the fictional age of 68, he joins the local Home Guard. Apart from his "we're doomed" catchphrase, Fraser constantly criticises his superiors and questions their abilities to command, not least Captain Mannering's. No more so than in the Christmas special episode in 1971, Battle of the Giants. An order arrives for the platoon to attend a church parade, wearing their medals. This is something that Captain Mannering tries to avoid, as he doesn't actually have any medals, as Fraser is keen to point out with that brilliant line, "Did you leave your medals at home?" Other characters like Godfrey have a medal for valour, in his case the military medal, whilst others seem to have a chest that tells the story of the British Empire, Lance Corporal Jones. But Fraser wears arguably the rarest medal. Finally, the men assemble to be inspected by Mannering. When he gets to Fraser, he is surprised to find that, along with his 3 medals from the First World War, the Scot is wearing a medal with a white ribbon. As only Mannering could, he pompously inquires, "Is that an authentic decoration or some foreign thing?" Fraser snarls back, "That, sir, is the Polar Medal for the Shackleton expedition." Before continuing in his characteristic bleakness, "A wild and lonely place, with nothing to behold but ice and snow. So they made the ribbon white." The Polar Medal. It really is a genuine British medal, and only about 900 have ever been awarded since its inception in 1857. And Fraser links his medal to one of the greatest Antarctic explorers of them all, Sir Ernest Shackleton. Shackleton has gone down in history for his famous 1914-17 expedition, when his ship sunk, but he managed to transport his men 720 nautical miles across the southern oceans in lifeboats without losing a single man. But it was Shackleton's previous expedition, the Nimrod expedition of 1907 to 1909, where Fraser earned his Polar Medal. The Nimrod expedition was the second time Shackleton had gone to Antarctica. The first had been with Captain Robert Falcon Scott in 1901. Known to history as Scott of the Antarctic, Captain Scott would famously perish with his team, returning after their defeat to be the first men to reach the South Pole. But that was in the future. On this first expedition, Shackleton joined Scott in an attempt to reach the South Pole. It ended in failure, with Shackleton sent home suffering from scurvy. In 1907, Shackleton raised funds for his own expedition. The goal? To be the first person to reach the South Pole. Called the Nimrod Expedition after their ship, Shackleton arrived off the coast of Antarctica via New Zealand in January 1908. A small shore party of 14 men plus ponies and dogs disembarked before Nimrod sailed back to New Zealand to avoid being crushed by the winter ice. During the following 12 months, Shackleton's expedition became the first to reach the magnetic South Pole, a 1,260-mile journey, and to climb Mount Erebus, the highest active volcano on the continent. In October 1908, Shackleton led a team of 4 for an assault on the geographic South Pole. They raced past Scott and Shackleton's previous record, but in January 1909, with food running out, they were forced to turn back. They were just 97 miles short of the pole. Shackleton and his team had walked 1,700 miles. As per his later, more famous expedition, Shackleton, despite the hardships of terrain and temperature, didn't lose a single man. The Nimrod returned in the Antarctic summer to pick up Shackleton and his entire shore team. Despite not achieving his goal, the fact that his team had travelled further south on Earth than anyone before made Shackleton into a national and probably international hero. He was knighted by King Edward VII. Maybe I need to tell some more in-depth stories about both Shackleton and Scott. What do you think? Please comment below. The Polar Medal was awarded to everyone on the expedition, not just the shore teams, but the rest of the Nimrod's crew too. After all, it was a team effort. 31 medals were awarded in reality, plus one fictional one, to James Fraser. So exactly what did Fraser do on the expedition? The scriptwriters never bothered to elaborate. And they would have been stretching it a bit to claim that he was on either of the parties journeying to either the geographic or the magnetic South Poles. After all, we know the names of the people on those teams. Maybe he was one of the 7 men left at the shore base, responsible for arranging supply dumps for the 2 assaults. More likely, given his naval experience, he was one of the crew actually on the Nimrod, which, having dropped off Shackleton's team, had sailed back to New Zealand, and then the following year come back to pick them up. It's a great story about Fraser, which has also enabled me to share with you one of the lesser-known adventures of Sir Ernest Shackleton, one of the greatest Antarctic explorers of them all. As a complete aside, one of his relatives, Dr. Richard Shackleton, was one of my history tutors at the University of Birmingham back in the 80s. So there you have it, John Laurie, aka Private Fraser from Dad's Army, a Shakespearean actor who fought at the Battle of the Somme, and who then served in the Real Home Guard in the Second World War, who ends up at the age of 71 playing the pessimistic undertaker in Dad's Army for 9 years. A man whose catchphrase of "We're doomed" was in response to reading the script and believing it would be a flop. Incidentally, during the first episode, the studio audience hardly laughed. And who, as Private Fraser, sports probably the most unique medal in the Warmington-on-Sea Home Guard platoon. The Polar Medal, gained with Sir Ernest Shackleton in Antarctica, that wild and lonely place with nothing to behold but ice and snow. Only Fraser could have ended up there. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a few things you hadn't come across before. Plenty more in the pipeline, but until next time, thanks for your support, keep well, and I'll see you very soon.